Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're taking a deep dive into a really powerful set of ideas. Ideas that challenge, well, pretty much everything you thought you knew about business, productivity, and just, getting things done.
Yeah.
We're drawing insights from a book that argues the new reality of work is fundamentally different from old school wisdom.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how the authors from this company, 37 Signals, just completely flipped traditional notions. Things like growth, planning, even like company culture, right? They turned it all on its head.
Right.
They actually built a multi-million-dollar business, but with a small, frugal, and very profitable model. And they were often called irresponsible or maybe even a fluke by critics.
A fluke. Wow.
Well, because they rejected common practices, endless meetings, massive budgets, even having dedicated sales teams. They just didn't do it the standard way.
Okay. And our mission for you today is really to extract those surprising nuggets, the things that can genuinely help you rethink your own approach, whether you're, a seasoned entrepreneur, a small business owner, or maybe someone just dreaming of starting something new while keeping your day job.
Yeah.
Get ready for some, I think, genuine aha moments here. This isn't just about what they did, it's about what you can learn.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right into challenging some of that deeply ingrained conventional wisdom, what the authors call the takedowns. Bold term.
It is, yeah.
And the first one redefines the new reality of business. The book argues technology has made tools that were previously way out of reach, incredibly accessible now, often even free.
Right.
What's the sort of profound implication of that?
Well, the biggest takeaway, I'd say, is that one person can now effectively do the job of many, sometimes, like a whole department's worth of work. And this new reality means you absolutely do not need those miserable 60 to 100-hour work weeks to succeed. It's a huge myth.
Really? So the grind isn't necessary?
Not according to them. They state that a focused 10 to 40 hours can actually be plenty to make it work. And maybe the most liberating part. You don't need to deplete your life savings or take on huge, terrifying risks anymore.
Okay.
Starting a business on the side, while keeping your day job, totally viable. And it can provide all the cash flow you need, actually.
That's a huge shift, not just in capability, but kind of in mindset, too.
Definitely.
And one of the most radical ideas they present, I think, is that offices are optional. It really hits home when you realize 37 Signals itself has employees spread across multiple cities, even continents.
Yeah.
So for you, the listener, what does optional offices truly enable? What's the benefit?
Well, it enables unparalleled flexibility. I mean, you can work from home, you can collaborate with people you've never actually met in person, people who live thousands of miles away. You can tap into talent pools globally. It's really about leveraging technology to build a business that fits your life rather than, forcing your life to fit some rigid business structure. This whole section really emphasizes that those traditional constraints, starting and running a business, they've largely just evaporated.
Which leads us nicely to a really thought-provoking point, why learning from mistakes is often, overrated.
Oh, yeah, this one's controversial.
We're constantly told, fail early, fail often.
Right.
That's the mantra.
Right.
But the authors argue that other people's failures aren't yours. Success, they say, is the experience that actually counts because it shows what worked.
Exactly. It shows you how to do it even better next time.
It really flips the script.
It does. Instead of dwelling on why something failed, you're looking at the blueprint of what led to a positive outcome. And they actually backed this up with some data. There was a Harvard Business School study.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it found that entrepreneurs who were already successful, they were far more likely to succeed again, like a 34% success rate for their future companies.
Okay, that makes sense.
But here's the kicker. Those whose companies failed the first time, they had almost the same follow-on success rate as complete first-timers, just 23%.
Wow. So failure didn't really give them much of an edge?
Not according to that study, no.
That's a huge pivot from what we usually hear. But isn't failure supposed to be, a great teacher? Doesn't it build resilience or force a rethink when things go wrong?
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Yep.
And they do acknowledge there's some learning and failure, obviously. But their main point is that success provides more direct, more actionable lessons.
Okay.
It shows you the path that actually leads somewhere positive, which is just far more efficient than learning every single wrong way to do something. It's kind of like evolution, right? It builds on what worked, not on what failed. They argue if you keep failing, you might just be reinforcing patterns of failure.
Okay, that's a different perspective. Speaking of things we kind of romanticize, let's talk business planning.
Planning.
The book flat out says planning is guessing.
Pretty blunt.
They argue that long-term business planning is basically a fantasy because of all the uncontrollable factors. Market conditions, competitors, customers, the economy.
Right.
Trying to write a rigid plan makes you feel in control, but you're controlling things you can't actually control.
Yeah, they're really direct about it. They suggest you just call your business plans business guesses.
Ha! Business guesses.
Financial plans are financial guesses. Strategic plans are strategic guesses.
Okay.
It instantly lowers the stakes, doesn't it? And the stress.
It does.
Plans, they say, often let the past drive the future. They put blinders on you, basically. And that hinders your ability to improvise, to seize new opportunities that pop up.
Because you're stuck on the plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you actually have the most knowledge at the end of a project, not the beginning when you're making the plan.
So if planning is just guessing, are they saying, like, don't plan at all, just wing it?
No, not quite winging it. It's more about a different kind of planning. It's about short-term adaptable planning. They argue the longer the plan, the more you're building on assumptions that will inevitably change. So it's about staying nimble, being able to react to the reality that unfolds, rather than rigidly sticking to some prediction you made months ago.
Which really seems to inform how they view growth, too.
Definitely.
The book urges you not to make assumptions about how big your company should be. Like, there's no preordained size.
Right.
Instead, they say, grow slowly, see what feels right.
Yeah, they warn that premature hiring and these huge growth spurts can actually be detrimental. They can cause companies to skip right over their appropriate sustainable size.
So small isn't just the stepping stone.
Exactly. Small can be a great destination in itself. It's kind of ironic, right? Small businesses often wish they were bigger, but large businesses, they frequently dream about being more agile, more flexible, like they were when they were small.
That's true.
Once you get big, it's incredibly hard to shrink without, morale damage or completely changing your whole business model. Locking in lots of expenses, employees, rent, big IT infrastructure, it just creates a complex and stressful business to run.
But isn't there a risk? If you prioritize being small, don't you miss out on, like, market dominance or economies of scale? Why should a starter feel okay aiming for smaller?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
And the authors address it by arguing that the agility and focus you gain from staying small often outweigh those perceived benefits of scale, especially early on.
Okay.
They believe that real market dominance comes from exceptional products and really passionate customers. And those are often easier to cultivate when you're nimble and directly connected to your work. So being small can be a strategic choice. For resilience, for profitability, it's not necessarily a sign of failure.
And finally, in this sort of takedown section, they challenge the very word entrepreneurs.
Yeah, this is interesting.
They suggest many profitable business owners don't even think of themselves that way. They're just people doing what they love on their own terms and getting paid for it.
Right. They propose replacing entrepreneurs with starters.
Yeah.
Just starters.
Starters. I like that.
Anyone who creates a new business.
Yeah.
You don't need an MBA or a fancy suit. You just need an idea, maybe a bit of confidence, and that initial push, to get started.
Yeah.
It kind of democratizes the whole idea of business creation. Makes it feel more accessible.
So if we're rethinking who a starter even is, then what's a very first step they should take? How do you get something off the ground? The book kicks off the Getting Things Done section with a really powerful idea. Make a meaningful dent in the universe.
Love that phrase.
Yeah. Great work comes from feeling you're making a difference, right? That your efforts are valuable and people would actually notice if you stopped.
And that dent, that doesn't mean you have to, cure cancer or launch a rocket to Mars.
Right, not world-changing, necessarily.
No, it's about shaking things up in your own sphere, leaving your mark, building a legacy, whatever that means for you. Think about Craigslist. Tiny company, few dozen employees maybe.
Yeah.
But they demolished the traditional classified ad business.
Huge impact.
Or the Drudge Report. It's just one simple web page, basically. But it had major influence for years. It shows impact isn't about size or complexity.
So what's the best way to kick off making that dent?
They say scratch your own itch.
Scratch your own itch, meaning...
Build something you genuinely need and want to use. If you're building something for yourself, you'll know the problem inside out. And you'll know the solution intimately, too.
Makes sense. You're the first customer.
Exactly. They also argue that ideas themselves are cheap. Execution is what truly matters.
Oh, the execution point.
Absolutely. They're very clear. Being, like, delusional about unacted upon ideas is a common trap. If you have this amazing idea, but you never actually build it, what's it worth?
Nothing, really.
Pretty much nothing. What you do is what matters, not just what you think or plan. The value is almost zero without execution.
But what about the classy problem? I have no time. People always say that.
Right. The authors call that no excuse. Well, yeah, but they argue there's always enough time if you spend it right. And you absolutely don't have to quit your day job to start something.
Okay, how?
Instead of watching TV or playing video games or scrolling social media, just squeeze out a few extra hours a week. Maybe go to bed an hour later or wake up an hour earlier. Use those small pockets of time.
And this approach, this low-risk approach, it's kind of brilliant, isn't it?
It really is. Because it lets you test your ideas and quickly find out if your initial excitement is real or if it's just, a passing fancy.
Yeah.
If it doesn't pan out, you haven't risked much. Just a bit of time. It's a very pragmatic way to validate your passion.
And when it comes to funding, their advice is crystal clear. Outside money is Plan Z.
Plan Z, like the absolute last resort.
Yeah. Aim to start on the cheap. History is full of great companies that began in garages or on kitchen tables, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And 37 Signals itself, they launched their first big product, Basecamp, totally on the cheap. They shared office space, used only one server at first, promoted it just by sharing their experiences online.
Wow.
And the founder actually answered customer emails himself in the beginning. And everything worked out just fine.
That really exemplifies their concept of less mass, doesn't it?
It does. That's a powerful idea.
Hmm.
You want to avoid long-term contracts, excess staff, permanent decisions.
Like locking yourself in.
Exactly. Avoid endless meetings, thick processes, inventory, technology lock-ins, rigid long-term roadmaps. All that stuff adds mass.
Why? What's the benefit of keeping mass low?
Because keeping your mass low lets you change direction quickly and efficiently.
So the less mass, the more agile you are.
Precisely. If you keep your mass low, you can change almost anything pretty quickly. Your entire business model, your product, your features, your marketing message. You can make mistakes and fix them fast. You can pivot your priorities or focus. And maybe most importantly, you can change your mind without incurring massive costs or organizational trauma.
Yeah, that makes sense. The more expensive it is to change, the less likely you are to do it.
Exactly.
And this often goes hand in hand with embracing constraints, right?
Yeah, they tie together.
The authors say, stop whining about, I don't have enough time money people experience. Less is actually a good thing.
Right. Constraints, they argue, are advantages in disguise. Limited resources force creativity.
Can you give an example?
Well, they mentioned prisoners making weapons from spoons. Extreme, maybe, but it makes the point.
Okay.
Or think about the TV show, The Price is Right. Super simple concept, basic games, but it attracted fans for decades. Southwest Airlines flying only Boeing 737s. That's a huge constraint, but it brings massive efficiency.
Right, everyone can work on any plane.
Exactly. All pilots, flight attendants, ground crew can work any flight. All parts fit all planes. Lower costs. And even 37 Signals, now that they do have more resources, they still force constraints on themselves.
Like how?
Like only having one or two people working on a new product initially. Or insisting on minimum viable features to prevent bloat. It's a deliberate choice for them, not just a limitation imposed from outside.
This leads us to a really crucial design philosophy they talk about. Build half a product, not a half-assed product.
This is key.
Trying to do too many great ideas at once just leads to a crappy product, they say.
Yeah. You have limited time, resources, ability, focus. You just can't do everything well.
So focus.
You're simply better off with a kick-ass something small but really well done, than a half-ass whole where everything is mediocre.
It's about prioritizing impact then.
Exactly. If you want to make a truly great product, you have to be willing to cut ideas that are just good or okay. You have to focus on making a few things exceptional.
So where do you even start with that kick-ass half? How do you decide what the core is?
They advise, start at the epicenter and ignore details early on.
The epicenter.
Yeah. So if you're opening a hot dog stand, you could worry about the condiments, the napkins, the design of the cart.
Right, all the extras.
But the first thing you should worry about is the hot dog itself. That's the epicenter.
Makes sense.
Architects don't pick out the shower tiles before the floor plan is even finalized, right?
Good analogy.
The details often lead to disagreements, endless meetings, delays. You get lost in stuff that doesn't really matter at the start.
So nail the basics first.
Nail the basics, then worry about specifics later. Often, you can't even tell which details matter most until you've started building and see how people actually use the core thing.
And to keep things moving, they emphasize that making the call is making progress.
Yes. Don't postpone decisions.
When you put off decisions, they just pile up, right? Create inertia.
Exactly. You need to commit to making choices. Don't wait for the perfect solution that might never come. Just decide and move forward.
Builds momentum.
Incredible momentum, and it boosts morale. Each decision is like laying another brick in your foundation. You feel like you're getting somewhere.
But what if you make the wrong call?
That's the key to decisions. Don't have to be permanent. That's often a fear that paralyzes people. 37 Signals initially avoided creating an affiliate program for ages because the perfect solution seemed too complex.
Okay.
Their breakthrough came when they just asked, what can we easily do right now that's good enough?
And the answer.
Pay affiliates in product credit instead of cash. Simple, easy to implement. They eventually implemented cash payments later, proving you can correct or improve things down the line.
Right.
Long-stalled projects just zap morale. So make the call, get something out now, even if it's not perfect.
That's why it's so important, they say, to be a curator.
Like a museum curator.
You don't make a great museum by just throwing all the art in the world into one room.
No, definitely not.
What makes it great is the stuff that's not on the walls, the careful selection.
Exactly. They say you should constantly be looking for things to cut, to simplify, to remove.
Even when things aren't working.
Especially then. The natural inclination is often to throw more resources at a problem. More money, more people.
Right. Add more stuff.
But they argue doing less can actually lead to a better outcome. Cut back, simplify, refocus.
This emphasis on doing less and focusing on your core strength, it also connects to their idea that tone is in your fingers.
Yeah, I like that one. The Eddie Van Halen analogy.
Right. You can buy the exact same guitar, the same amps, the same pedals he used.
But it'll still sound like you playing it, not him.
Exactly. Your unique approach, your personal style, that matters far more than having the fanciest tools or the most expensive equipment.
It's about what you bring to it, not just what you buy.
Okay, here's a really interesting one. Byproducts can be products.
Oh yeah, finding value in the waste.
Identify and utilize the side creations, the stuff you make along the way while doing your main business.
Like lumber company selling sawdust, right? That used to be waste.
Exactly. Or the band Wilco. They released a documentary about making one of their albums, made money off the movie, reached a wider audience.
Henry Ford creating Kingsford charcoal from wood scraps left over from making Model T cars. Classic example.
Wow, I didn't know that was the origin.
Yep. And, fittingly, 37 Signals' own book, Getting Real, which this whole deep dive is based on. That was essentially a byproduct.
How so?
It came from the insights and processes they developed while building their software. They packaged up their internal knowledge.
So look at everything you create. Internal docs, problem solved.
Yeah. Any of it could potentially be a product or a revenue stream you haven't considered.
And to keep that momentum going, they really advocate for the power of quick wins.
Short bursts of progress.
Impose short, maybe even aggressive deadlines. Like, ask yourselves, what can we realistically get done in just 2 weeks?
Right. Short projects force focus. And crucially, they generate enthusiasm. They create good news.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that energizes your team, gets your customers excited too. A steady stream of tangible progress keeps everyone engaged.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk boosting productivity and also dealing with competition.
Okay.
The book advises us to constantly be asking the right questions for productivity. What are some of those key questions?
Well, one is, are you adding value? Meaning, is this change actually making your product more valuable for customers? Because value, they say, it's like ketchup on fries. Balance is key. Too much ruins it.
Huh, good analogy. Okay, what else?
Another critical one. Will this change behavior? Don't just add something unless it has a real demonstrable impact on how people actually use your product.
Don't just add features for the sake of adding features.
Exactly. And maybe the most critical one, is it really worth it?
Worth the effort.
Yeah. Is this meeting really worth pulling 6 people away from their work for an hour? Is this task worth pulling an all-nighter for? Or could you just finish it tomorrow when you're rested? Determine the real cost versus the real benefit before you just dive in.
And on the topic of getting things done, they encourage us to embrace good enough.
Ah, the enemy of perfectionism.
Right. Perfectionism is a notorious killer of progress. Sometimes timeliness is just far more important than perfect polish or even absolute top quality.
Yeah, they give an example of like a local car dealership ad. It might look low production value.
It's cheesy, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a bit cheesy, but it's timely. They got it out fast to promote a weekend sale instead of waiting weeks to perfect it to, like, Madison Avenue standards. Good enough was better.
And a core non-negotiable for sustainable productivity, they say. Prioritize sleep.
Oh, absolutely crucial. And often overlooked.
Foregoing sleep, they argue, just destroys creativity, morale, your whole attitude.
The costs pile up significantly.
Yeah.
Things like stubbornness, you plow down bad paths because you're too tired to think clearly or pivot. Lack of creativity, you stop coming up with those clever 1/10 effort solutions because your brain is just fried. Diminished morale, your brain starts feeding on easier, less demanding tasks just to feel productive.
And irritability.
Snapping at people.
Yeah, reduces your patience. They really emphasize, don't romanticize sleep deprivation. It has severe, real costs to your work and well-being.
Okay, when it comes to managing tasks, they've got some pretty blunt advice again. They say, your estimates suck.
Probably true for most of us.
So what's the solution if our estimates are terrible?
Break down large projects into much smaller pieces. A big 12-week project. Structure it as 12 individual one-week projects instead. Much more manageable.
And for smaller tasks, same idea. Break down a daunting, say, 30-hour task into more realistic 6 to 10-hour chunks.
Yeah.
You can actually see progress that way.
This is also why they say long lists don't get done.
Right. They're basically just guilt trips sitting there making you feel bad.
To make smaller to-do lists.
Yeah, achievable lists. And for prioritization, they have a neat visual trick. Don't use numbers or labels like A1, B2.
Okay.
Just put the single most important thing at the absolute top of the list, physically at the top. When that's done, you cross it off, and the next thing on the list automatically becomes the next most important thing. That way, you only ever have one next most important thing to focus on at any given time. It simplifies everything mentally.
I like that. Very simple. And speaking of decisions, they advocate make tiny decisions.
Yeah, related to breaking things down.
Big decisions are hard to make, right? And even harder to change. Plus, there's often a lot of ego involved.
Definitely. So instead, make choices that are small enough to be effectively temporary, easily reversible.
Less pressure.
Way less pressure. And it builds that sense of accomplishment, keeps things moving, allows for incredible flexibility without this huge fear of making the wrong big choice.
Now, shifting to competitors, here's a bold one. Don't copy your competitors.
Yeah, very counterintuitive in some ways.
Copying, they argue, is just a formula for failure in business. Your unique approach is precisely what sets you apart.
Right. Think about Zappos. They sell the same shoes as lots of other places,
True.
but they set themselves apart through this obsession with customer service. They even have all new employees, regardless of role, start by answering customer phone calls.
Wow, really ingrains it.
Yeah. Or Polyface Farm, that environmentally friendly farm in Virginia. They don't just sell chickens. They sell a unique ethical farming philosophy.
And people respond to that.
Totally. Customers love them for it, drive hundreds of miles sometimes for their clean meat. The lesson is, pour yourself into your product and everything around it. Make it undeniably you.
And another surprising piece of advice related to competition. Pick a fight.
Yeah. Sounds aggressive.
Yeah. Differentiate yourself by having an enemy. Not necessarily a person, but maybe an industry standard, a competitor's philosophy, or just a conventional way of thinking.
Okay, like who?
Well, Audi challenging old luxury car brands. Apple constantly jabbing at Microsoft back in the day. 7UP branding itself as the Uncola.
Ah, setting up a contrast.
Exactly. Dyson Airblade hand dryers taking on wasteful paper towels. Having an enemy gives you a great story, a clear position, and it can really ignite passion in customers who agree with you, and maybe even more counterintuitive, underdo your competition.
Underdo them, not outdo.
Right. Conventional wisdom says you have to one-up your competitors, add more features, be bigger, better, faster. The book suggests doing less, but doing that smaller thing exceptionally well.
Okay, example.
The original flip camcorder. Remember those? Yeah, super simple.
Exactly. It succeeded precisely because it offered less. No big screen, no photo taking ability, no complicated menus, no optical zoom.
Just record video easily.
Just simple, easy video capture. That was its strength.
So instead of trying to be everything to everyone,
You highlight what your product doesn't do. And you're proud of its simplicity. It's about being really, really good at one core thing, not mediocre at 100 things.
But isn't there a risk there? Won't you be seen as less capable or less full-featured if you actively choose to underdo the competition? How do you position that without just sounding like you're lacking features?
That's a really good question. The key isn't to position it as less capable, but as more focused.
Ah, focus.
Yeah, you highlight the benefits of that focus. For the flip camera, the benefit was just turn it on and record. That was a huge relief for people who were overwhelmed by complex camcorders with tons of buttons and menus.
Right. Less is more in that case.
Exactly. It's about clarity of purpose and being unapologetically niche. If that niche is served exceptionally well by your focused approach, don't be afraid to say we don't do X because we're amazing at Y.
Ultimately, then, the advice seems to be, who cares what they're doing? Referring to competitors.
Pretty much. Obsessing over your competition just causes stress. It dilutes your own vision, and it makes you reactionary instead of visionary. You're always chasing, not leading.
Yeah.
The competitive landscape changes constantly anyway, and it's largely out of your control. Focus on improving yourself, your own product, your own execution. Your internal world is far more important than the external competition.
Better to fail doing your own thing.
Better to fail fighting for what you believe in, they argue, than succeed by just imitating others.
Okay, let's move into the final stretch here. Evolution, promotion, and dealing with people.
Right.
A crucial habit they recommend is to say no by default.
Ooh, that's hard for people pleasers.
Totally. It's easy to say yes, right? To more features, to optimistic deadlines, but it quickly creates these overwhelming piles of work and complexity.
Yeah, they quote Henry Ford, famously saying, if I'd listened to customers, I'd have given them a faster horse.
Ha! Good quote. Meaning customers don't always know what's truly innovative or best for the product overall.
Exactly. You rarely regret saying no, but you'll often regret saying yes to too many things. And they caution against taking that customer is always right mantra too literally, especially if it means ruining the product experience for everyone else.
Like a chef adding bananas to lasagna just because one customer asked.
Exactly. Perfect example. You have to
Yeah.
protect the integrity of the core offering. ING Direct, the online bank, they built a huge, fast-growing business, partly by consistently saying no to things.
Like what?
No to credit cards initially, no to brokerage services, no to large, complex commercial deposits. They kept things incredibly simple and focused, and that was their appeal.
That sounds great in theory, say no by default, but how do you actually balance that? How do you avoid just alienating customers or demotivating your team if you're constantly pushing back on new ideas?
Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balance. It really comes down to clear communication and showing the why behind the no.
So explain the reasoning.
Right. It's not about being dismissive or arbitrary. It's about protecting the core vision, protecting the team's focus, ensuring quality. Sometimes saying no to a feature now means you can deliver something truly excellent later. Or it means you're preventing feature bloat that would actually degrade the overall experience for everyone. It's about having discipline and really knowing your product's core purpose and being able to articulate that.
And related to new ideas, they say don't confuse enthusiasm with priority.
Ah, the shiny new object syndrome.
Exactly. New ideas always give you that rush, right?
Yeah.
That excitement. But enthusiasm is not an accurate indicator of true worth or priority.
So true. What seems like a guaranteed surefire hit in the heat of the moment
Yeah.
can easily look like just a nice to have by the next morning once you've slept on it.
So let ideas cool off.
Yeah, they strongly advise letting new ideas cool off for a while before you drop everything and chase them. Give
Yeah.
it some time and perspective.
This also applies, interestingly, to customer requests. Their advice is don't write down customer requests, but with a catch, the ones that matter.
Right. What does that mean?
It means the requests that truly matter, the ones that reflect a widespread need or pain point, they'll be repeated over and over again.
So your customers become your memory.
Exactly. Your customers will effectively remember the important stuff for you by bringing it up repeatedly.
And if you keep forgetting a request,
Eagle.
if it only comes up once or twice.
That's a very clear sign it probably isn't actually very important to the majority of your users. The really critical stuff just doesn't go away quietly. Okay, shifting to company dynamics now. They argue you don't create a culture.
Interesting. We talk so much about building culture.
Right, but they say culture is really just a byproduct of consistent behavior.
How so?
If you consistently encourage sharing, then sharing will naturally become part of your culture. If you consistently reward trust, then trust will be the bedrock.
So it's not about the foosball tables or the inspiring slogans on the wall.
Nope, it's about action. Consistent action over time. Don't try to force it or manufacture it. Just demonstrate the behaviors you value day in and day out.
And when it comes to hiring, Their advice is skip the rock stars and trust your team.
No rock stars. But don't you want top talent?
Well, instead of this endless, often futile search for mythical rock stars, they argue you should focus on creating a rock star environment.
An environment.
Yeah, an environment built on trust, autonomy, and genuine responsibility. They believe there's tons of untapped potential just sitting there in most teams,
It's trapped.
often trapped under, like, lame company policies and excessive bureaucracy and micromanagement. Free people up, trust them, and they'll often surprise you.
And this means treating people like adults.
Yeah.
They're not 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't treat employees like children, basically. Constant approvals needed for tiny things, bans on using social media during breaks.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. That kind of micromanagement just creates non-thinkers. It breeds distrust, and policing it all is expensive and time-consuming anyway.
Plus, people need diversions. Nobody works nonstop for 8 hours straight.
Exactly. Give people freedom and responsibility, treat them like adults, and they'll usually act like them.
Building on that trust, they say, send people home at 5.
No mandatory late nights, no glorifying workaholism.
Nope, don't encourage it. They argue that people who have lives outside work, families, hobbies, interests are actually often more efficient and focused during work hours.
Why? Because they have to be.
Exactly. They get their work done because they have somewhere else important to be. It fosters discipline and focus rather than just letting work expand to fill all available time. Okay, let's talk promotion. Their advice here is kind of counterintuitive, too. Welcome obscurity.
Welcome being unknown. Isn't the goal to get known?
Well, yeah, eventually, but being obscure, especially early on, is actually a great position to be in, they argue.
Why is that?
Because you can use that time to experiment, to make mistakes without intense public scrutiny. It's like a free test market. Like Dunkin' Donuts testing pizza in a few locations, or Broadway shows doing trial runs in smaller cities before hitting the big stage.
Exactly those kinds of things. You can refine your product, your message, your process while the stakes are low.
And instead of just buying attention through ads, they say build an audience. Earn it.
Right. 37 Signal's own blog, Signal versus Noise, it generates hundreds of thousands of daily readers who are just genuinely interested in their ideas and how they work.
So they're building relationships first.
Yeah. This audience is already engaged, already interested. So when the company does have something to sell or announce, that audience is primed and receptive. It's not a cold sell. This also includes going behind the scenes.
Showing how the sausage is made.
Kind of, yeah. People are inherently curious about how things are made, how decisions get made. Think of those popular shows like Deadliest Catch or Unwrapped.
Yeah, you get invested in the process and the people.
Exactly. It humanizes your company. It builds a much deeper bond with customers than just showing off a polished, finished product with no context. And related to that authenticity, nobody likes plastic flowers.
Meaning?
Don't try to seem perfect. Show your flaws. Be real. Imperfections are human, and people respond to realness.
So don't worry about how you're supposed to sound or act.
Show the world what you're really like. Warts and all, as they say. Authenticity wins over fake polish every time.
Okay, another blunt piece of advice on the marketing front. Drug dealers, get it right.
Whoa. Okay, explain that one.
What they mean is offer a small, free taste of your product that's so good, so valuable in itself, that customers will be compelled to come back with money for more.
The free sample model.
Exactly. Bakeries offering a bite of bread, car dealerships letting you test drive, free software trials, all classic examples.
And it forces you to make something compelling right up front.
Right. It forces you to make something bite-sized and easily digestible that acts as a powerful introduction to what you offer.
And finally, a really powerful summary of their whole approach to promotion. Marketing is everything you do.
Not just the marketing department.
No, definitely not. It's not just a department. It's not just a few specific events or campaigns. It's the sum total of every single action your business takes.
Every interaction.
Every phone call your support team makes. Every email you send. Every error message on your website. Even the after-dinner mint at a restaurant. Or the clarity of the invoice you send.
All those little touch points matter.
They argue all those seemingly little things are far more important collectively than, say, choosing the right color for the free pens you give out at a conference. Marketing is woven into the fabric of the business. So if we try to, connect all this to the bigger picture, what really emerges is a truly powerful philosophy. It's about focusing relentlessly on the essentials, staying incredibly lean, and prioritizing real value over just perceived industry norms or expectations.
Mm.
It's really about designing a business that fundamentally works for you and for your customers, not one that just blindly adheres to outdated or maybe even irrelevant rules.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? As you consider these insights, maybe it's time to question some of those must-dos in your own work or your own business, those things you've just accepted as like gospel truth without really thinking about it.
Yeah.
Are you truly prioritizing sleep? Or are you buying into the hustle culture? Are you embracing your constraints, seeing them as creative fuel, or just fighting against them?
Are you letting that exciting new idea cool off for a day or two before dropping everything to pursue it? Or do you jump on every new thing?
These are good questions to ask.
Which raises, I think, an important question for you, our listener, to ponder. What's one widely accepted business truth, or maybe a productivity rule, that you now feel compelled to genuinely challenge after hearing these insights today?
Something to think about. We
Yeah.
really hope this deep dive into the ideas from Rework gives you some clarity, maybe some confidence to forge your own path, to make work what you want it to be.